joining me to go through all of the top stories is former Conservative Special Advisor Charlie Rowley. Good morning to you once again. There's so much to talk about. Let's talk about Lee Anderson, of course, is leading a lot of the front pages today, saying, I want my country back. He's gone from being originally a Labour councillor, he's a Tory MP, now an independent MP after he got suspended for comments he made about Sadiq Khan. He's now become the first Reform UK MP. Some talk of other Tories in talks, whether that will lead to some saying even up to 10 in talks, leading to any other defections. But also a lot of Tory MPs who want to stay put, saying this is a big signal to the Prime Minister. It is time for you to, change course and get back to the sort of values that Conservative voters thought they were voting for. The question I'm putting to our audience today is if you were a Tory MP, what would you do right now? Like, would you basically try and, oust the Prime Minister, another leadership election? Would you defect? Would you try and persuade the party to change? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so give us a call on 0344 499 1000, text 87222, or get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, text cost £1, standard network rate message. Charlie, you were advisor to Tory MP Michael Gove in office. What would you do if you were an MP right now?
Well, I wouldn't defect and I wouldn't call for the Prime Minister to resign. I don't think the public would forgive the Tory party again changing its leader and changing Prime Minister.
Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and a possible death.
Exactly. It would be. I think it would be almost unforgivable. But that's not to say where there are challenges or where people have got different points of view or a different policy perspective, that you can have those robust debates. That should be taking place within the Conservative Party. That should be taking place arguably behind closed doors in order to allow MPs, whether in the north or in the south, whether you're on the right of the Conservative Party or on the right in terms of centre-right politics, or if you're one nation sort of centre-left in terms of Conservative Party politics, you should be able to have those debates as a party collectively, find a way forward, find agreement to make sure that in the run-up to an election, everybody has got something that they can say on the doorstep as to why the Conservative...
Can you be all things to all men? I know parties are all broad coalitions. You look at the Labour Party, I mean, they've got, people who are sort of full-on socialists in there and people who are very much on the champagne socialist end of things, not really, in any way. I mean, you can have a broad range of views, but at the end of the day, you can only have one policy for certain things. You're either in favour of, say, your net zero, or you're either handing out hundreds of thousands of visas to people to come to this country as immigrants, or you're cutting that number. You're either deporting illegal migrants, or you're allowing them to stay and putting them up in hotels. I mean, there are some things, you can't be a little bit pregnant. So this is about a battle for policies rather than what Rishi Sunak says. Rishi Sunak says all the right things. A lot of people feel, though, he doesn't actually do any of them.
And he's got to be able to go to the country to say, look, he set out his 5 priorities at the start of last year, not even this year.
Out?
And he will say...
How's that working
he will,
out?
well, he will say that inflation, the number one issue, has getting inflation down.
The thing he didn't cause and had no impact on bringing down.
But you can... Well, if you take the wrong policies, the wrong policy direction and have a terrible budget, not too dissimilar, might I say, to his predecessor, things can go very wrong in the other direction.
But the latest budget, Jeremy Hunt, there's no doubt Rishi Sunak would have had a big input on that, because Jeremy Hunt's not really got an economics background and banking background, and Rishi Sunak does. He was Chancellor himself, of course. That hasn't done anything to boost the party in the opinion polls, and some polls have suggested they've actually gone down as a result of it.
Well, and polls are only a particular snapshot in time, but I think
elections.
And that's the only poll that matters. And when it comes to that poll, the only person that will become Prime Minister at the end of the day is either Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer. So
that's the argument against leaving at the end of the day. And again, I've written a column for The Sun today about how 3 choices for MPs, being do you want to defect, do you want to try and change policies and things, or you're going to basically try and oust the current leader. Who would another leader be? Who is the leader who will lead the party, unite the party and change direction? God knows who that person would be, who could command a majority of party members and MPs. But also that a lot of people are just thinking it might just be too late.
Well, we'll have to wait and see when that election comes. But I think, in the run-up to it, the Prime Minister wants to be able to say that I've achieved a number of, made good progress in a number of those areas, even those areas that are, whether it's the economy or whether it's on the NHS or whether it's on tackling illegal immigration through the Rwanda policy. Now, whatever you think about Rwanda, I think making a success of it or getting it off the ground is something that I think that, quite literally, exactly, is something that I think people will look at this Prime Minister and think, OK, it's clearly been a difficult road. The Home Office is besotted with problems. We see that plainly to see in every newspaper virtually every day. So but for him to be able to do something in this area where no other Prime Minister seems to have been able to do, Labour or Tory or otherwise, I think would be something that would be welcome.
OK. Do you think, I mean, just yes or no, do you think there will be more Tory MPs following Lee Anderson to reform UK?
No.
Very interesting. Right, we'll hold him to that. Hold him to that. Let me also ask you about this Tory donor, though, Frank Hester. Never heard of him. I'm sure most people hadn't, but now we've heard of him for all the wrong reasons. He runs a health tech firm. Last year, he gave a whopping 10 million quid to the Tory party. He's been a huge, huge donor to the party. But he is reported in The Guardian. They've got a recording of this from a 2019 meeting in his own organisation, he's actually talking about the executive, a female executive at another organisation, basically talking about how much he really doesn't like her. And this is what he apparently said. It's like trying not to be racist, but you see Diane Abbott on the TV and you're just like, I hate you. You just want to hate all black women because she's there. I don't hate all black women at all, but I think she should be shot. He says, referring to this executive, and Diane Abbott needs to be shot. Now, I'm not a big fan of people getting their knickers in a twist about people using flowery language, even when it's offensive flowery language, when people, do I think this man is saying he thinks that Diane Abbott should be shot? No, I don't think that. It's nevertheless, though, a pretty foul thing for someone to say. And we know even in 2019, there were attacks on MPs. MPs had already been killed. Joe Cox had already been murdered. Other MPs had already needed security. We know Diane Abbott has showered with racist and sexist abuse over the years as an MP. And whatever you think of her, my view is you can criticise her on everything she says and does, every hypocritical policy statement she's ever made, and lots of other things. But her colour and her sex are completely irrelevant to why she's not a good politician, in my view. But these comments, you see one black woman and you just want to hate all black women. I don't know what could be racist if that isn't racist. That's a blatantly racist and sexist statement.
It is.
How on earth is the Tory party accepting money from a man like that?
Well, the comments are just foul. OK, he's apologised, and I don't know...
Does that make it OK?
Absolutely not, no. If it took place, I think, in 2019, 5 years ago, I don't know when the money was sort of given to the Conservative Party.
Last year.
As Tim, and as Tim Montgomery, brilliant commentator, was saying, I imagine the Tory Party has largely spent a lot of it, or certainly invested in it. So
the question is whether or not they should hand the money back. That's what Labour is saying. They should hand the money back. They shouldn't want money from this man, because otherwise, you're saying you don't have an issue with someone saying this. Now, I think you can still have an issue with someone saying it, but as you say, you've spent the money. I don't know if handing the money back solves anything, but why would you want money from a man who had those views? Those are shocking views. I mean, when he said in a meeting, when he was like James Cleverly, was party chairman and everything, but they would no doubt have come across each other. What did he think about James Cleverly, who's a black man? What did he think about other politicians of colour, including the Prime Minister and others? What was he saying behind their backs? If when he sees them, does he hate all Asians? I mean, we don't know, but I would hazard a guess that he said this. It wasn't even a private conversation with one person. This was something he openly said at a meeting. And
obviously thought it would be funny in some way, which is obviously not. Those comments should never have been made. And I don't think the Tory party will be taking any more money from him.
No, they're often a defence of these people, and I don't know how old he is. He's probably older than me, but either way, no, I'd never accidentally, hear anyone else saying this who I know. It's when he says, like, you're trying not to be racist. You don't have to try not to be racist. You just aren't racist. It's really easy. Now, Diane Abbott has actually issued a statement in response to this. Apparently, this man had tried to call her twice yesterday to apologise, but got no response. She has said, "It is frightening. I live in Hackney and do not drive, so I find myself at weekends popping on a bus or even walking places more than most MPs. I'm a single woman. That makes me vulnerable anyway. But to hear someone talking like this is worrying." I think she's got every right to be frightened about this sort of thing. It stirs up. I mean, she does get horrible hatred and abuse online, although it annoys me when you make any criticism of her. People go, "Oh, it's because you're stirring up racist hatred." No, it's perfectly easy to criticise her for a million things that she's said and done without anything to do with her race or her sex. She, however, and it doesn't justify anything that was said at all, not even pretending that. She, however, has said some quite blatantly racist things herself, in my view. She has said in the past, the problem in Britain is not immigration, the problem in Britain is white people. She's also tweeted, "White people love playing divide and rule. We should not play their game. Tactics as old as colonialism." And she also got suspended last year from Labour. It's still a suspended MP for a letter to the Observer, which she claimed was a first draft, in which she claimed that Jews experience prejudice but not racism, in the same way that ginger people experience prejudice, not racism. I mean, she's got form herself, so it's less easy to have sympathy for her, but that doesn't excuse this, does it?
It doesn't, and we should be just making sure that we call out all of these comments, regardless of who they come from, at any given time, on an equal basis. So, you know, Diane Abbott has absolutely said some awful things that you've just read out
Racist
there.
things, that's racist.
And
whenever you talk about any group of people based on their colour alone, you're being a racist. Doesn't matter whether you're black or white when you say it.
Exactly. And language matters in politics.
Yeah.
We know that. And we've just seen, you know, not so long ago, you know, Mike Freer's constituency office was, you know, a victim of an arson attack because he represents a large Jewish populated constituency. Now, obviously, that relates to, things that are going on in Gaza with Israel at the minute. But it is still just a sense and a flavour of the hate that can be exposed in this country. And when you get comments like that you've heard from Mr. Hester, that doesn't help diffuse tensions.
No,
it ramps them up
absolutely.
and it makes people feel unsafe, and that is just not acceptable.
Absolutely. But again, and not that that would have impacted what this man's views are, in my view. But the non-stop obsession and talk about race has been coming with the anti-racist thing, as opposed to how I grew up, when you just basically, it was just irrelevant. And I completely understand that if you are, experiencing racism as a ethnic minority person in this country, that's very different. But I think for most people in this country, they would accept that the world, our country is a much better place. It's a very welcoming place, and actually, the vast majority of people in this country are not racist, and the vast majority of people are horrified by racism. And but those signals still need to be made loud and clear. But here's an idea: maybe we didn't talk about it all the time. We're forced to talk about it all the time, and HR being obsessed with diversity and equity all the time, that wouldn't be exacerbating the problem. Let's also talk about something we're going to talk to a guest about in just a couple of minutes. So I promise I won't lambast you again. But Rishi Sunak announcing new gas power stations to ease the risk of blackouts. Blackouts, of course, directly as a result of relying on unreliable solar and wind power for our electricity, which is only 20% of our energy needs. He's known, as everyone who's paid any attention would know, that we're going to have blackouts if we rely on unreliable energy sources. So he wants to build more gas power stations. But, I mean, he's still committed to net zero electricity by 2035, Labour by 2030, neither of which is unachievable.
Well, and again, what you don't want to have is a situation where hardworking people and household bills are increasing, and that's exactly what would happen under Labour's 28 billion sort of commitment to just green policies.
It just happened and is happening and will continue to happen under the Tory policy too.
But that's why I think having the balance between and the backup to have, oil and gas in this country that you still need, that can still function, but you can achieve net zero to have a cleaner, greener, more sustainable
there's nothing sustainable about having unreliable energy.
But new technologies will come into the...
Well, and when they do, we will embrace them.
Electric
they ain't
vehicles
there yet.
And carbon capture and...
When we have a new reliable energy, when we have battery storage, absolutely, let's do it. 100%, all in favour of cleaner energy. Until then, I'd like the lights on and the heating on, please. And I like factories to be able to function.
And that's why I think you having these power stations that will need to be built...
Having backup. So paying for unreliable energy and then paying twice for the backup. That seems like a good idea. I mean, why our Conservative government is supporting this nonsense, I do not know. But there we are. They still are. Right, I promised I'd move on. I promised him I wouldn't go on.
We will
Schooled him earlier.
By the end of the show,
we're going to get Charlie McAllister on in a moment. He's going to explain it all. You're going to listen to him. Let's talk about cyber flashing. I don't know why we want to talk about it. No, I do. It's because a man is due to be sentenced today in England for the first time for cyber flashing. It became a criminal offence in England from the Online Safety Act in January this year. It's previously been an offence in Scotland since 2009. Nicholas Hawke, is a man from Basildon in Essex. He sent unsolicited photos of his erect penis, sorry if you've got the kids there, to a woman and to a 15-year-old girl on WhatsApp back in February last year, and he's subsequently pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sending a photograph or film of genitals to cause alarm, distress or humiliation. Here's the thing, maybe it's just because I'm a middle-aged married woman. Why are people sending photographs, definitely unsolicited, but even solicited, of their genitals to each other? This was not a thing in my day.
No, I think that's right, and I think look, the explosion of, if I can use that phrase, of online harms and online communication and social media. It is a whole new world, and it is an incredibly dark web.
Sitting there eating your cornflakes or just getting on the bus and opening your phone, and then suddenly there's a picture of of a sex organ. It's going to be very distressing. It's the same. It's very similar actually to being flashed at.
Yes.
I think I've only been sent one. This is not an encouragement to do so, please. And it was like, oh, why would you do that? I'm quite amazed by the number of young women, though, who are on things like Instagram. And I remember the BBC a year or two ago doing a big story about how awful it was that this woman was sent a load of pictures of men's penises. Now, I'm not saying they should have done it, but she's posing non-stop in racy lingerie, in very sexual poses on her bed. And that's all her Instagram pictures. I won't name her because I was getting into trouble. And then she's written an article about how she doesn't understand why all these men are sending her pictures of their bits. And I'm thinking, well, rather they didn't. And you didn't ask them to, but she's got her direct messages open. And is she surprised that men don't think it's an invitation, some men, small minority of men, an invitation to send her these pictures? Now, why these men think that she's going to want them is the big question mark to me. But it is a bizarre thing, but a lot of young people do it. My rule, I always said to my daughter and her friends, like, here's a real rule. Don't put any picture, don't send any picture at all on your phone, even just to your best friend, that you don't want your head teacher to see.
Yes, and there's a huge difference, obviously, as you said earlier on, between unsolicited sending and people who are happy to exchange those kinds of images. Now that is,
but then
that is
you might exchange them with
but
someone you're dating that week.
Exactly, and so it is probably best never to send anything like that. But it is.
Are we being now? You're very young. You're young and hip. I'm old-fashioned and married. I mean, I'm just I think these people are all insane.
Well, I think it is. It can be a form of abuse and power. You need to send an unsolicited. Exactly, and that is why it's absolutely right that it's illegal now, and that's why this chap is being sentenced today. But there is always note to self and caution that if you are in a relationship or not, or if you're just engaging, you might not always be. And
revenge porn and all of that.
Exactly so. And so just being that little bit more cautious and careful about what you send might not be a bad thing.
No, absolutely. And just one final word on another photo that was, I mean, I would say unsolicited by the nation, which was the photo of Kate and her kids. We talked to Kinsey Schofield in America saying, look, the plot is setting all the conspiracy theories. Every effort that the palace makes, even with their apology, that doesn't actually say that Kate edited the photo. It really doesn't say that, guys. It's been lawyered, that message yesterday was definitely lawyered. Every aspect of this story has made the situation worse. The picture that's been put out, which is not the papers today, of Kate with William in a car, but a blacked-out car window, you can just see her looking away. That picture somehow not intrusive. It clearly is. It's obviously been okayed by the palace for the press to use that picture. She wouldn't have been in that car otherwise. They know what they're doing. But that doesn't resolve anything at all. They are just making the situation worse, aren't they?
I think so. They're allowing the story to rumble on now. I mean, it is, for me, a storm in a teacup. I don't care.
Don't care.
There are other things that going on in the world that should probably grip
People
the nation's
don't be able to pay their energy bills, of course.
Exactly. And I think it's something that will pass. But it obviously raises more questions about the royal family and particularly the health of Kate.
I think also raised a lot of questions about the people who are working for them not being very good at their jobs. As I say, flunking, palace flunkies, but there we are. Right.